Thanks for the intro. So appreciate everyone showing up today to talk Future Vertical Lift. We certainly want to start off by saying thank you to Congress for the great support in the 18 and 19 timeframe. We really appreciate their trust as we kind of come out of the blocks sprinting with a number of initiatives, and we're going to spend that or invest those resources wisely and earn that trust. We also wanted to thank just the Army senior leaders and the Army aviation leaders for a great year, as we really were empowered across our cross-functional team and got some tremendous things done this year. I quickly wanted to review our 4 lines of effort. We really view these as part of multi-domain operations as an ecosystem that's going to operate from relative sanctuary, quickly aggregate with increased reach, which is speed, range, and endurance, be able to aggregate, penetrate contested airspace, and then exploit that penetration by projecting combat power through a window of opportunity. And so our 3 lines of effort start off with an open system architecture that will allow us to operate at the speed of technology and also increase competition, thereby decreasing cost by preventing vendor lock. Next is our advanced UAS. Again, this advanced UAS is heterogeneous, so it's not just one type of UAS, it's multiple types that are purpose-built, typically runway independent, and can help us do the dangerous or dirty work that is needed in a very contested and competitive battlefield. We feel that the AUAS is going to conduct a lot of our targeting and bring lethal and non-lethal effects into an enemy A2AD environment. Next is the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft, which is going to be the close combat conductor of the advanced UAS and of helping the air-ground team, so deeply interoperable with intel warfighting function, fires, and maneuver to, again, dominate a window or a corridor and understand that we've dominated that and exploit that. Last is our Future Long-Range Assault Aircraft, and it is not a last priority. It's the most important priority because as we open a window, we want to be able to exploit that and project combat power through it. And that's what that Future Long-Range Assault Aircraft is going to do. Very quickly, a lot of people ask, well, why CFT? What have you done? What's gotten done? And I want to quickly go over some metrics of this past, really 9 months. We had a very good week last week in dropping 2 RFPs, basically. I'll save the 1 RFP on Future Tactical UAS for General Todd, but the big one for us was the solicitation on the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft. That was out on 3 October. So that requirement for that helicopter was written in less than 6 months and approved by the Chief of Staff of the Army. And then also I want to give a shout out to John Mays, the park. His contracting team was able to work in parallel with us and drop the 2nd largest other transactional authority the Army's ever done in less than 6 months. So really kudos to your team, John, and also the entire CFT. So we had great participation across the 6-pack. We kept it very flat with the 6-pack GOs, so General Gaylor and Gabram at the top, General Todd, General Francis at Damo AV, Mr. Shipley down at TAPO, and obviously Tom O'Connor out at the G8 FDV. So we kept a very tight and transparent process with the 6-pack. Great interaction with our S&T folks at all the decks. Great interaction with our contracting folks, our study folks out at TRAC and AMSA, and we're able to push those 2 efforts pretty quickly. Also, I want to tout that we got 2 other requirements documents through the process, our Future Tactical UAS requirement document and a aviation weapons, submunitions, and systems ICD. So getting after our lethality. So just to wrap it up, so I don't talk too long, again, we're laser focused on the National Defense Strategy, laser focused on increasing our lethality, reach, protection, and sustainment of our aviation force for that 2028 future force. And I'll be followed by Thomas.
Okay. Thanks, Wally. So good afternoon, everybody. Thomas Todd, PO for Aviation, been that for about a year and a half. Certainly have enjoyed working with Wally. We're a great team. I believe we've got fantastic teammates in the CFT as well as PMs that really sit on that and support the CFT on a daily basis. Colonel Steve Clark over here, PM for FEL. We've got other PMs that support it as well, PM UAS, Colonel Scott Anderson back here, and some others. So I encourage you to get to know them. We are one, we're not two, despite what you may have heard. So we have a great, obviously, tradition, but we only want to make it better. And that's really what the goal of it is to get after the top priorities of the Army, to make it better each and every day and find that it's left better than we found it. First, I want to thank industry. We've got a lot of great partners out there that are working with us today, have worked with us for a long time. We deliver about 10,000 items, whether it be aircraft or mission equipment, every year to the field. And we'll continue to do that in support of the new priorities. With that said, I would ask that no matter what we talk about, that you understand that the roles are slightly different. When it comes to the PEO for execution, we're really taking what's been decided upon and trying to finish it out. That's ultimately what a PEO is here for, always has been here for. You know, we actually get after 4 distinct things as we take whatever the prototype is that's built. And we get after reliability, survivability, affordability, and producibility. So those are real focus areas for us each and every day. Because number one, at the scale the Army has to buy to, we can't afford to buy eloquent, expensive solutions. So I ask that you think about affordability in each and every day and what you do and how you can pass it on to us, the soldier, the taxpayer. Producibility, we can't afford to launch out on things that can't be produced reliably. From a reliability standpoint, we can't afford to hand things to the soldiers that break and have quality issues. And survivability standpoint, both on the future battlefield as well as airworthiness, they're really important to us. So thematically, that's really where we kind of have our foundation as a PEO. No matter what Wally asks us to do, you know, no matter what prototype is developed, we've got to finish it out. We got to, as the Vice says, we got to build, test, and produce it. So we look forward to doing that. He already talked to you about FARA. I'll talk to you about future tactical UAS a little bit, as well as future long-range reconnaissance. Assault. So, you know, first and foremost, future tactical UAS is kind of really something that we've been asking for. It's a BCT-oriented UAS that ultimately isn't necessarily a replacement for the Shadow, but could be, depending on how it goes with you, industry. We've heard for a long time that you're ready. Okay, so you're going to get your chance. So we're ready to see what you've got. You've got the solicitation. Wally and his team worked that up. You know, that was put out ultimately recently, and we look forward to this year awarding, down select, having 3 vendors awarded ultimately what will be a demonstration effort with BCTs. So we look forward to potentially having a couple solutions per vendor as well. So I ask that you be agile in your proposals, think about really what we need, get after it quickly. It's going to happen very fast. We're going to put it hopefully based off your schedule of what you propose into the hands of soldiers and get some great feedback. We do have a big decision point though based off of that where we go in the future. So I ask that you think about how to help us really get after kind of where our needs are with future tactical UAS. FY19 is a big year. For what was formerly known as CAPESAT 3, we really are moving down a nice path with that. A big year for AOA, for the Army, as well as the Joint Force. We will make decisions this year. So we are prepared. The PM is prepared to continue forward with that program, and we expect to get a requirement to do so. The real question is again, against the 4 measures of success for me, is it going to be something we can afford? Where are you in what you're proposing? Are you interested in just getting on board to sell your product, or are you interested in getting on board to help soldiers? And quite frankly, we don't have room for repeats of the past where we basically let everybody play and ultimately try to satisfy everybody's stake or interest. What we have to produce ultimately for that program is something that meets the requirements in the most expeditious manner possible and at the most affordable solution so that we can produce at scale. Nobody produces at scale like U.S. Army Aviation as far as aviation goes throughout the world, so that is something that has to be taken into account each and every day. So I look forward to your questions. It's a great opportunity to be up here. I think it's great for us to be seen publicly together because we do a lot privately together. It's a great team. We look forward to continue success.
Well, thank you, General. Andrew Hunter from Center for Strategic and International Studies. Pleasure to be with you. We have been focusing on Future Vertical Lift for a few years now with an event series a while back, and currently working on some vertical lift modernization scenarios that will make public soon, so keep your eye out for that. I'm going to maybe focus a little bit on the big picture, or at least try to. What makes Future Vertical Lift so interesting to me is the fact that we are on the cusp of a generational leap of technology. And there's a lot of rhetoric all the time in defense acquisition that says we're on the leap of a generational leap in capability, but a lot of times you find that there's more PowerPoint involved in that than there is actual generationally leaping technologies, at least ones that are ready to implement. And what's fascinating about Future Vertical Lift is that we have actual aircraft demonstrators that are either flying or soon to be flying that actually show that these leaps are quite practical and quite possible in the near term. And so the question is, how do you actually move that forward into implementation? How do you get from great ideas that have been prototyped or demonstrated and turn it into an acquisition program that delivers, as the General said, on an affordable, producible way? And in a lot of ways, it seems like the current moment is perfect for Future Vertical Lift, because we have these new authorities for doing rapid prototyping, rapid fielding, that could potentially, and I see that the Army is making a concerted effort, more than a college try, to use these authorities to move the ball forward, to get some additional prototypes for the future attack reconnaissance aircraft and make this a reality. I'm a big fan of that approach. My time in the Pentagon was working on rapid acquisition. I think we proved that this can be done very effectively, but doing it inside the kind of more traditional acquisition process is a challenge. These authorities provide the opportunity for that. But I think one question that I think we'll want to answer as we go forward with this is a question of, if we're going to do rapid prototyping and rapid fielding of these capabilities, what exactly is the prototyping doing? There's different types of prototyping out there that you can do. There's concept demonstration prototypes, experimental prototypes, risk reduction prototypes. And it seems to me there's a reason actually you could consider all of those different paths for this effort, because the Army and the Joint Force together is at a moment where they're relooking at basic concepts of operations, developing multi-domain and other terms that are like multi-domain for how the Joint Force could operate in the future. I saw a very interesting article the other day by Bob Scales where he talked about vertical lift as a critical enabler of the Joint Force to get to a new form of multi-domain operations. And so the potential for exploring those new concepts of operations, using prototypes to do that, to show the art of the possible, is exciting. But a concept demonstrator probably is going to get you that affordability, producibility benchmarks that the General has emphasized. And so risk reduction prototyping is going to be a more mature or steady path on that road. And so for me, what I'm looking for is what are the main concepts that these vertical lift platforms are really going to enable with their dramatically enhanced speed and range and hopefully improved survivability and maintainability at the same time. And what risks are the central risks in actually doing that? What is the risk that has to be burned down and has to be reduced? And the Army's made a lot of progress on that. I want to give them credit, because with the JMRTD and the and the work on modular open systems to buy down risk on the integration are exactly, I think, the right way to go forward. So I'm excited to see where this effort goes, and I think I'm ready to open it up to questions if there are folks who have questions.
Okay, just to kind of continue the conversation, I think another thing, just prompted by the other gentleman's comments, we're working. So we kind of, I kind of spoke about what we did last year, and really we're not resting on our laurels. We have much more to do this coming year. I think as we see the CAPESAT 3 or the Future Long-Range Assault Aircraft AOA finish up, we'll know far more on what the potentials are there, and we're going to be focused on that, on how we fully leverage the JMR program, both on the advanced rotorcraft design side and the open architecture side. I think we're also got a very deep focus on our portions of our advanced UAS portfolio, in particular our air-launched effects. And so as we look at our aviation weapons and subsystem munitions ICD, so we just call it the awesome ICD, so I'll just say it for that for now on. But as we look at the awesome ICD and we see where we really have to get after lethality, we're going to be very much focused on our air-launched effects, creating that overmatch with our pacing threats. Because we are mindful, we're in a very long competition with peer and near peer nation states, and we understand that competition more and more every day, and we understand that we need to be far more lethal than we are today. And then I think last comment would be that we're really deepening our interoperability across the CFTs. So when we look at fires, when we look at maneuver and next-gen combat vehicle, when we look at the network, AP&T, synthetic training environment, and soldier lethality, we're very much looking at deepening our interoperability so our combined arms team can compete, as I spoke to. And again, I think there may be a question. Okay, go ahead. I think the gentleman in the red.
Good morning, sir. What would that process actually look like for small businesses and startups to actually, get in the process and say, hey, this is what we're working on, future tech, alternative fuels, things of that nature?
Yeah, I would encourage you to get involved in the SBIR program. You may already be, certainly, with the labs. A lot of what is going to come out is going to come through, really, some of our traditional labs that you may or may not be used to be working with already. So broad agency announcements will come out continuously. There are always opportunities for you to propose unique technologies, if you might have those, that might be of interest that ultimately General Rugen would want to experiment with, right? And to demonstrate and see it demonstrated before we make a decision to go produce. We traditionally have a pretty decent SBIR program. I would encourage you to use that first and foremost. We're also, certainly will try to achieve goals for small business set-asides on these programs like we do all others. One of the things that we're kind of brushing over here is OTAs and consortiums. So that is really what helps. So I would encourage you also to join that. And if there is an issue with, some of the joining or the fees to join, let us know, because we're interested in having discussions with consortiums about being restrictive or being too expensive ultimately for industry partners to join. We don't want that. We want access to you, and we want to make it better for you each and every day. I hope that helps a little bit. Yeah, Vertical Lift Consortium is one of those. There are others, obviously, that are formed each and every day. I think the VLC is the most mature that we know of in Army aviation. They have the ability to be accessed via OTA vehicles, and I encourage you to talk to them or others that you might see come about. And again, let us know if it's restrictive in any way, because we're not on your side of the fence. We don't know what you know. but we're willing to have that conversation.
Sir, if it turns out going forward with both the former Capability Set 1 and Capability Set 3 aircraft at the same time as the JMRTD, what synergies do you hope to get between all of those, or are they going to compete for scarce resources?
Well, I think everything has to compete, whether there's scarce resources or not. So first and foremost, the technology has to be ready, and if it's not ready, we won't proceed. We do have multiple off-ramps on both schedules that senior leaders will touch it and understand where we're at and how we will proceed forward. I think to get after the other side of your comment, I would just say that we're at a great inflection point with Army Aviation. We really can't afford not to pursue both and pursue a future force now. We have wonderful modernization levels across all of our fleets currently, based on 17 years of conflict and great investment by the nation and the department. And so we're at a great inflection point to jump off. As we look at the bills that come into the fore with recap and reset of our current fleet in the 30s, the business case is quite compelling to jump to the future with pursuing both Cape sets, again, if the technology is ready, near simultaneously. Andrew's got a comment.
One thing I just wanted to add to that is I think the other big competitor for resources is the rest of the aviation portfolio, the Army aviation portfolio, which is to say some of the existing production lines and programs that are out there. And I don't want to set up, a giant, cage match competition here, but in reality, I think resources within that portfolio, it appears to me, are going to be in competition with one another. But it's not just FVL versus FVL. It's the whole game.
So I'll address some of that too, because I'm obviously tasked with still modernizing while we're looking hard at the future. And we are fully supportive as an Army of multi-years remaining intact. So if there's any question about that, no, but the Army is fully supportive. Where we've been going with Black Hawk, Apache, and Chinook, there are limited resources, but I wouldn't say that's unique. We always deal with that. The question is, what do we do with them? And so I believe that what you've seen put forward and what General Rugen has as his budget is exactly what he needs. And going forward, at the end of the day, I think we all have to ask ourselves the real question that's kind of just sitting out there, which is, is a particular airframe, whatever your favorite airframe is, name it. Is it and should it be what my grandson is flying? And it's not fair to him to say that your airframe, no matter how much you love it, should just stick around in infinity. It should not. And oh, by the way, guess what? The enemy gets a vote. And what General Rugen's trying to do with concepts, with requirements, really shaping the future, is all about the next airframe, the next capability, and it's the right thing to do. So we will work seamlessly with him and the rest of the Army to maintain and keep our commitment to the Army to deliver Army acquisition objectives that have been given to us, and we think that they're stable. So,
and I'll just pile on. It's about overmatch. We have to build that overmatch by 2028. It's about risk, and I think the risk is in two places. If something happens between now and then, our current programs need to be vibrant enough to take that risk on, but we also have to look at the future risk and understand that as well, and harmonize those two aspects. And then lastly, there is concern about the industrial base, and so when I talk about an inflection point of being at a great percentage modernized, those fleets are getting bought out, and we better lay in something new, otherwise we lose key industries that we can never rebuild. So if we have gaps in production, I think those are troubling, and we have to make sure that those gaps are closed without wasting resources.
Hi, Lee Hudson, Aviation Week. Could you talk about, or is there a cost cap set for both of the FEL efforts?
There are very good and very stringent cost goals in all of our obviously the FARA solicitation had a cost goal both for flyaway cost and for dollar per flight hour. And we're going to continue that in any future requirement document as well. You know, we can't afford to, we have to have a grown-up discussion about trades, right? And we have to have affordable aircraft that are still next gen and leap ahead, and we want to understand what we really, really need and what may be just nice to have. We can't afford boutique solutions that may be great, but really for the cost aren't ultimately worth it in the life cycle. So we've set strong goals in that area, and we're challenging industry with a pretty high bar to meet them, and I think they can. You know, if you look at some of the manufacturing techniques, a lot of our helicopter industrial base has gone to school on advancing those and are really producing things in a far more rapid and efficient manner, and we're looking to exploit that. You may have more on that.
No, the only thing I'll add is you know, affordability is big at scale for the Army, and that's why General Rugen and his team have put those goals in there. We've been fairly consistent in saying, look, we're going to continue to spend at similar rates. So, you know, it's pretty easy to do the math if industry really understands where we've got to be. We don't live in an unconstrained world, and so the trades piece that he mentioned is really key. It's going to, if we do cost-type trades, we'll truly know what, I guess, whether or not it's worth the bang for the buck. Obviously, that's an ongoing event every year that we're going to have to do actively in the Army. So no more static programs, right? Dynamic programs that we talk frequently, we make decisions frequently, we make good decisions frequently, and hopefully stay agile as a leadership community.
I just wanted to say one thing on the incentive structure of cost. I think for the airframe manufacturers, having that cost be something that's low so the Army can buy a lot of it is going to be a major incentive. But with the use of the modular open systems type approach, you know, a lot of the money for these programs is going to go into the mission system. And volume may not be the same kind of incentive for producers of mission systems. So I just think that's going to be a challenge for the Army to work through. I think the airframers are going to have every incentive to get to those cost targets. On the mission system side, the incentive may not be as strong. So that means that the folks like General Todd have to get really good with their contracts to keep that incentive strong.
We got time for one more.
Thank you. Philip Kwan with Intelsat General Corporation. So my question is really in reference to the interoperability and the modernization question. The conversation that takes place between the CFTs. For example, you've got the FVL CFT and then you've got the network CFT. We know that you're going to fight the network in the future, okay? And that's probably, I'm a SATCOM guy, so I'm thinking we're working on putting SATCOM on helicopters. Who articulates that requirement? Because if you're talking about the airframe, you've got to tell the manufacturers to make room for size, weight, and power based on that. Is that the network CFT or is that the airframe? I don't know how that talks. Same thing from a modernization. How do we get in the discussion so that comes out as a requirement so the manufacturers say, okay, got it, we need to go ahead and look at that. Thank you.
Take a step. So I'll start and then turn it back over. You know, we face that. As we look at the current fleet, we can't build a future fleet that doesn't work with the current fleet, vice versa. So we deal in PO Aviation with the network CFT as well as the PNT CFT. So we really serve a lot of different masters. The goal being, as the MOSA architecture moves forward, you know, is it something that we can make sure is backwards compatible first and foremost? We work with the network CFT in turn to make sure that whatever the common standards that are being put in place are complied with for air-ground or air-to-air comms, and the PNT obviously for nav and timing. But we do have an aviation unique piece to this that's not common to the rest of the Army, that's common only to aviation. And so we work together, whether it be existing programs, connectivity through those different OEM solutions that we have in our aircraft, which is really kind of problematic for us. To hand a combat aviation brigade multiple OEM solutions that are all unique is not where we want to be. So I think the beauty of MOSA is it seeks to create the environment which the aviator operates in, the aircrew operates in. And we expect industry then to be able to work within that fusion protocol that is provided and the standards so that a common operating environment, much like the Army is working for a common operating environment throughout the Army for Mission Command, that we have a common operating environment in both the future and current fleet. The challenge for us will be how do we handle the rest of the fleet as he rolls out new products, how do we make sure it's backwards compatible? We've done that before, we can do that again, but it's going to take a deliberate effort.
They're giving us the hook, but 10 seconds. There's a lot of horizontal cross-functional teaming going on as well. So not just the vertical I talked about, but cross-cutting as well. And so we're working very hard with that with Army Futures Command to sync that up. And we're aware of those challenges and solving them.
One last quick thing. I see we have a lot of partner nation military folks here. So I just wanted to mention with Future Vertical Lift, you know, how do we make the airframe a bestseller globally? I think it has the potential for that. You don't want to get trapped into a situation where you got to negotiate requirements with 35 nations every time you want to adjust a widget, but you want to be in a position where it just inherently has that adaptability that partners and allies are looking for, and I think there's good potential for that.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.